Beginning of this year, I did a video called 5 Things That I Learned in My First Year of My Plant Journey. And in that video, I shared not only my reflections, but also my goals and hopes and dreams as I enter into my second year of my plant journey in 2020. But little did I know that we're going to get thrust into this pandemic. And now that it's almost the end of the year, just to have a full circle with that video that I did at the beginning of the year, I want to take time to do a little bit of reflection on our plant journey this year, as well as share with you my 5 planting resolutions for 2021. Hi everyone, it's Marian and welcome to day 5 of 12 Days of Plantmas. And as I said in my intro, in this video I'll be talking about my 5 planting resolutions for 2021, and expect that I'm gonna go on tangents and rants as I explain why I am choosing to have those resolutions for 2021. So please bear with me. But I think you're gonna enjoy the discussion that we're gonna have today and hope it will help you reflect on your own plant journey as well. So the very first resolution that I want to make for 2021 is to cut down my plant collection into half. And if you've seen both my spring plant collection video and my fall plant collection video, you'd know that I started with around 50 plants early this year, and now I have over 100 plants. So I doubled my plant collection in less than a year. And that was quite shocking to me because for me, my goal has always to have a smaller plant collection. I try to practice sustainable lifestyle and minimalism in my everyday life. Not perfectly, not consistently, but a constant effort is definitely made, and I try to advocate for a more sustainable lifestyle in all of my platforms as often as I can. And for me, my understanding and my philosophy when it comes to sustainable lifestyle is the core of sustainability is us producing less waste, and that means reducing our overconsumption of material things. The less we consume, the less we purchase, the less waste we produce. And yes, as far as having hobbies and collection goes, having a plant hobby and a plant collection is far more sustainable compared to other forms of hobbies and collections out there. But everything else involved in plant growing, plant purchasing, the items that we buy to take care of our plants is not always sustainable. So even before the pandemic, having houseplants has been a rising trend, especially among millennials. And people make fun of us because us millennials, we don't want to get married, we don't have kids, we don't have we don't want to get married, we don't have kids, we don't have a lot of income. We can't afford to buy our own property or land, so instead we own plants and pots of soil. We have a popular saying in the plant community that plants make people happy. But recently I saw a No New Ones November TikTok that said plants don't really make people happy. It's just a way to mask our depression. And it's funny, haha, but there's some truth to it. I mean, both things can be true. Many people have told me that having plants and taking care of plants have substituted for their therapy. Even for myself, I've often talked about how taking care of houseplants is a form of active meditation for me. Plants do a lot of things for us. It gives us a sense of fulfillment, a sense of purpose, especially during this pandemic when our whole world was turned upside down and thrown into chaos. It also teaches us a lot of lessons that we could apply outside of plants, like having patience and gratitude. But collecting plants can also be another form of conspicuous consumption. The thrill of the chase and high of getting a wish list plant or a plant that everybody else want and be among the first or belong to the club that gets it first. The high from that is great, but also very ephemeral. It is not sustainable. It leads to overconsumption and us biting off more than we can chew. And also might just be a seasonal thing because as I've talked about in how to ready your plants for the fall video, during this time, people are going to be talking a lot about downsizing their plants, appreciating the plants that they already have, and right on schedule, it is the phase that I'm currently going through. But I'm not trying to be cheeky about it or be like, I'm not like other plant parents. But my goal has always really been to just have a smaller plant collection. The thought of having hundreds and hundreds of plants give me anxiety. And for me, a smaller plant collection is what works for me. If you have a large plant collection, that's great. If it makes you happy, it works for you. But for me, what makes me happy and what works for me is having a much smaller plant collection because of limited space, financial reasons, and also as a person online who advocates for sustainability. I don't want to perpetuate that having a large plant collection or having the high-end plants. It's the only way that you could be a plant YouTuber or legitimately call yourself a plant parent or know what you're talking about when it comes to houseplants. Yes, plants make people happy, but plant shopping, especially chasing the next wishlist plants or the next trendy plant, is no different than any form of retail therapy. It could lead to overconsumption and mass over issues that we probably should deal with and not try to deal it with buying more stuff. I read or heard someone say that if buying something can truly make us happy, we would stop buying it after the first time we bought it. But yet we keep buying things, multiple things of the same thing, like clothes, shoes, makeup, jewelry, gadgets, and yes, plants. This is not the thing that we bought that makes us happy. It's the purchasing power of having the ability to buy something that gives us that temporary happiness. And that is very true, especially in this pandemic. When we saw people hoarding toilet paper of all things during the beginning of this pandemic, it's not really about the toilet paper, but it's about the ability to buy something that we think we need to survive this pandemic in excess. And we might not be among those people who hoarded toilet paper during this pandemic, but we are definitely among those people who hoarded houseplants as a coping mechanism in order to survive this pandemic. And you'd think that with the sudden economic downturn brought about by the pandemic, people would be spending a lot less, saving their money, but Amazon had its record year. In the plant world, plant growers and plant sellers couldn't keep up with the demand fast enough that it led to prices of houseplants rising very quickly, even for common plants and not just with the rare plants. So yeah, that's my tangent and long rant to say that I want to cut my plant collection in half in 2021. Cutting back my collection down to 50 I know is unrealistic, but if I have 70 or 75 plants around this time next year, then I would have achieved my goal. And that would really mean just me giving out my duplicates and stop buying duplicates and letting go of plants that I keep holding on to, maybe for some sentimental reason, but I know I won't miss them if I give them away or if I sell them away. So in late winter, early spring next year, I would do a video where I would Marie Kondo my plant collection and pick which plants I want to keep, which ones I want to sell, and which ones I want to give away. My second resolution is to keep track of the plants that I'd be purchasing in 2021. So this year, my game plan was to have a plant budget, which largely worked. I know that if I actually sat down and did the math, I didn't spend any money that I didn't have or didn't allocate for buying plants, which is money that I got from selling stuff on Poshmark and also reselling some of my plants. But if I include stuff that I spend on my outdoor garden, stuff that I spent on the accessories and products that I bought in order to take care of my plants, I don't have to sit down and do the math to know that I did overspend money on my plants. So for next year, I will keep track of not just how much I spent on my plants, but how many plants I've bought as I'm buying them. Because I think the genuine shock of realizing that I doubled my plant collection from spring is because I was under the honest impression that I wasn't buying that many plants. I wasn't going to nurseries or gardens every week like I did last year. I can probably count on one hand the number of times I actually did a plant haul video, and each haul video wasn't a lot of plants. Sometimes it's just one, maybe four the most. All the while I thought I probably just added 10, maybe 15 new plants into my collection. But when I actually sat down and made the list, I came up to 33 before I stopped, and that's not including plants that I got from trades and plants that were gifted to me. So for next year, my game plan is to also keep track of the number of plants that I'm buying, not just how much I spent on them, and hopefully that will help me not grow my plant collection as quickly. And like I said in my wish list video, only add the plants that I really want into my collection. I want to give myself a limit of 10 new plants next year, but I know that's unrealistic, but I don't want to add another 30 or 40 more plants into my plant collection next year. So if I could keep it into under 20, 10 ideally, that would be great. My third plant resolution for 2021 is to no longer import plants. And I know it's starting to sound like my issues or resolutions when it comes to plants is really about money, But what it's really about is me reevaluating my relationship with my plants and also my role as a plant person who shares her plant journey online. And I hate to be that person who discourages others to do something that they already did, especially us plant parents who are already in our second, third, fourth, or fifth year into our plant journey and already have pretty much the plants that new plant parents are clamoring for right now. So it's easy for us to say, oh, don't chase the plant trends and don't go after the expensive rare plants when we already have them in our collection. At some point, it started sounding like we are scolding new plant parents for wanting the trendy plants and willing to pay a high price for the rare plants instead of teaching them or help educate them on plant prices. And I'm not attacking anyone who spoke out on this issue. It's just the overall vibe that I got, whether it's on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or in the Facebook groups that I'm in. And also, it's just also the lack of self-awareness because we're in a pandemic and we're complaining about high plant prices. I mean, like I said earlier, having a plant hobby is a privilege. And, let's read the room. Let's step back a bit. Like, complaining about plant prices is the least thing that we should be complaining about in this pandemic and in the economy that we have right now.
There's people that are dying.
And I'm not saying it's wrong to complain about the rising plant prices. It's definitely an issue, but let's not go after the plant enthusiasts or the private sellers who sell plants at a higher price, because no individual plant seller or even 100 plant sellers would dictate the prices of plants. But instead, let's start asking questions to companies and large plant growers who basically are starting to monopolize the plant market and who are selling the plants that we want at a higher wholesale price to begin with. And yes, there are plants that are justified with their higher price point, but at the same time, a pothos plant that I paid $20 for at the beginning of the year now costs twice the amount for a smaller pot size. So maybe let's focus our energy fighting against monopoly in the plant market instead of going after plant enthusiasts who are selling their plants to other plant sellers willing to pay the price that they have for the plant that they're selling, because honestly these plant sellers are also just going by the current market rate. They are not dictating the prices. These wholesalers are, and these plant growers and big companies are, especially the ones who have a patent on these plants which prevents other growers and other nurseries from growing them themselves because of the patent. That's just my take on it. So anyways, going back to my point, it is the rising cost of houseplants in the US that led me to import plants from Thailand back in August, because even with the shipping and the phytosanitary certificate, it was still cheaper to get the plants that I got from Thailand compared to if I got them in the US. However, the only video that I really did for my plants that I imported from Thailand is the unboxing video, where I look really happy because the plants that I got came in a relatively better condition than most people got when they imported their plants. But what most people don't know, except maybe for my Plantiful newsletter subscribers, because I did an exclusive video for them on it, is the aftermath of me buying or importing plants from Thailand. The rehabilitation of the plants that I got was so difficult that it tested my plant parenting skills, and never before a plant made me cry. The Thai Constellation Monstera definitely made me cry, because at one point I thought I was going to lose the entire plant. So when people ask me where I imported my plants from, I hesitate because I do want to fairly warn them, but also at the same time I don't want to sound like I'm gatekeeping. Because if you just watch my unboxing video, it seems like everything was great with importing plants and it would be worth the risk for you to import your plants as well. But as I just explained, and for many other reasons, I don't see myself importing plants again in the future, just because I don't think the benefit outweigh the cons. But if you still want to import plants from abroad, I highly suggest doing your research. Don't just go by people's YouTube videos of their unboxings. Do the research on the company that you're buying from, the laws in your state, in your country, and the country that you're buying it from, because the laws and regulation on importing plants and even shipping plants within the United States is rapidly changing. So you want to be very informed before you make that decision to import plants or not. And my number 4 plant resolution for 2021 is when it comes to outdoor gardening, just focus on the high yield crops. So this year, like a lot of people, I did my own victory garden. Even before the whole pandemic started and suddenly we thought we could be homesteaders overnight, I already did plan on taking on outdoor gardening and try to grow some of my foods. But despite the advice of more experienced outdoor gardeners, I still got overzealous and planted way too many varieties of crops that I am supposed to. And the skills in outdoor gardening and growing your own food is something that cannot be learned overnight or even in one growing season. So around midsummer, I literally and figuratively burned out when it comes to my outdoor garden. I still maintained the summer crops that I already had, but my original plan of doing a second round of cold weather crops that didn't materialize. For me, what worked really well was actually the cold weather crops when it comes to the leafy greens, the kales, different types of lettuces, spinach, arugula, bok choy, Swiss chard. They give me high yield that I was actually harvesting food from the garden and having that farm to table experience. But there are some cold weather crops that also didn't work out for me, like the broccoli, even though I was able to grow ahead of it, and cauliflower. And if you've seen my IG stories of me harvesting the carrots that I planted way back in March, that was a very pitiful harvest of carrots for something that I grew for like about 8 months. And when it comes to the summer crops, my tomatoes did work out pretty well, and so did my peppers. So they gave me enough yield that I was actually not buying peppers and tomatoes all throughout summer. But for the rest of the summer crops that I tried to grow, like squash, beans, okra, and all of that, I didn't really get enough harvest from them for it to be worthwhile growing those crops. Last but not the least, my number 5 plant resolution for 2021 is to advocate more strongly for a more sustainable plant parenting style. So my Wishes Life, when it actually started, is supposed to be me documenting my sustainable lifestyle journey, and my plant journey was just supposed to be one part of it. But as you might have realized, the plant journey part has taken over the channel, and I don't mind because I enjoyed it. I love talking about plants. But at the same time, I feel like I'm squandering this opportunity to advocate more strongly for a sustainable lifestyle because I strongly believe that houseplants is a perfect gateway to educate people about environmental issues, about food insecurity, climate change, and etc. I want to do a better job next year of helping connect those dots, and I have to admit that I struggled to do that a little bit this year. So if there was a perfect time to segue from plants into sustainable lifestyle, the time is now, because as you might have noticed, plant videos are no longer exclusive to Plant YouTube. Lifestyle vloggers, family vloggers, DIY channel, home makeover channels, channels that don't have anything to do with plants do plant videos as part of their content. So if there's a time for me to advocate for something else and still keep it about plants, don't worry, this channel is still going to be very much about plants and gardening. And it doesn't have to be as literal as me creating content about sustainable lifestyle, but me incorporating a lot more sustainable lifestyle habits when I talk about houseplants and gardening and everything that's related to houseplants. And hopefully I'll be able to set an example for plant parents, especially new plant parents, to incorporate a lot more sustainable lifestyle habits into their plant parenthood. And as you might have watched in my houseplants back to basic video, I try to do that a little bit. I encourage bottom watering because in my view it saves a lot more water. I encourage reusing and recycling the plastic nursery pots that your plants came in, and discourage repotting right away. So you have the use of those plastic nursery pots for a much longer time. And if you're going to repot, use terracotta pots because that's the more sustainable material. And if you're making your own soil mix, using coco coir over peat moss, and also how to turn your fruit scraps and your vegetable scraps into a homemade fertilizer for your houseplants and those kind of stuff. So hopefully those types of plant pairing tips not only help you take better care of your houseplants, but also help you incorporate more sustainable habits into your plant parenting. Because for me, it's the biggest oxymoron and also unethical that we are trying to bring nature indoors. At the same time, we are harming the nature that is outdoors, that is in the wild in their natural habitat. So for me, it's only natural that the interest in houseplants would lead into wanting to be more educated and raise awareness on conservation, protecting wildlife sanctuaries, protecting public lands, reforestation, caring more about environmental policies and climate change policies, and supporting groups and institutions that advocate for those things and do the work on those issues. So those are my 5 plantee resolutions for 2021. Cut my plant collection in half, keep track of the plants that I'm going to buy in 2021, stop importing plants, focus only on high yield crops for my outdoor garden, and 5, advocate for a more sustainable Planned Parenthood lifestyle. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and let me know down in the comments what are your plant resolutions for 2021, and I'll see you at day 6 of 12 Days of Plantmas. Bye!